Alone on his tropical island, Robinson Crusoe can take as long as he wants to build a cabin for himself. It's up to him. We don't have that luxury when we produce for market exchange. When Wonder Bread makes bread, they're competing in the market against Pepperidge Farm, Arnold, and White Rose. If their workers are less productive, if they take longer to make bread, that doesn't mean that they can sell their bread for more money. The social value of bread is not set by individuals, but by the average amount of time it takes to produce bread. This is called the socially necessary labor time. In neoclassical economic theory, there are all sorts of concepts that, though mathematically elegant on paper, have very little descriptive power in the real world. When was a capitalist society ever in general equilibrium? When was there ever Pareto optimality? When did consumers ever measure their desires in utils?
All the scientific devices of chronology are machines manufacturing time. The tool that in our hands means victory. And our hands must be as relentless as the hands of our clocks. They cannot afford to be less.
Socially necessary labor time is not like that. Socially necessary labor time is something very real that we can observe at work every day. The private labor that goes on behind factory doors will not know for sure what its social value is until the products of that labor enter the market to be compared to the products of other workers. In the market, these private labors become social. Socially necessary labor time is asserted. This socially necessary labor time then acts back upon production. It disciplines what goes on in the factory. Factories that were spending more labor than was socially necessary are considered inefficient. They must change their production methods or else go out of business. Factories that were producing under the socially necessary labor time, that were more efficient than average, are rewarded. Let's say the average television takes 1 hour to make. 1 hour is the socially necessary labor time for televisions. But the owner of the Acme TV factory invests in some fancy new machines that make his workers twice as productive. They can now make a television in 30 minutes. They are producing way below the socially necessary labor time. This allows Acme to produce twice as many televisions in the same amount of time. Now, if Acme sold their new TV at half the old price, they wouldn't make any more money than before, and there would have been no point in investing in all of that new stuff. Rather than selling them at their individual value of 30 minutes, they continue to sell them at their socially necessary labor time of 1 hour, or perhaps just under the socially necessary labor time, in order to outsell their rivals. Because the price of TVs hasn't changed significantly, there is still the same demand from consumers for TVs. But now there is a giant surplus of TVs on the market because Acme has been making twice as many TVs. Acme's rivals won't be able to sell all of their TVs. Part of their product will go unsold. Meanwhile, Acme will sell most of their TVs at the socially necessary labor time, making not just their normal profit, but an additional super profit, because they've sold their TVs above their individual values by selling at or near the socially necessary labor time. Profit comes from exploiting workers. The only way to turn money into more money is to invest it in workers, or to be precise, in labor power, the only commodity which can produce more value than it costs. And this is all covered in the video Law of Value 5. When Acme sells TVs at under the socially necessary labor time, they don't just reap their normal profits from exploiting workers, they also get super profits, profit appropriated in exchange, because their TVs are made at under the socially necessary labor time. It is this race for super profits that drives much of the technological dynamism of a capitalist society, as capitalists compete to constantly lower socially necessary labor time. By doing so, capitalists don't just exploit value from workers, they also appropriate value in exchange. A superficial look at the Acme TV factory might give one the impression that Acme is making more profit because they are creating more value. But this is not the case. The same amount of workers are doing the same amount of work as before. The same amount of labor time is being performed, spread out over a greater number of commodities. Thus, the amount of value they create is not increasing merely because the physical output is increasing. It is extremely important to understand this difference between physical productivity and value productivity. As it becomes easier to make TVs, their prices fall. Thus, just because we can make more of something doesn't mean we have created more value. If other firms were to adopt technology similar to Acme's, we would see the socially necessary labor time of TVs fall to half of its former value, and Acme's super profits would disappear. What does it mean to say that Acme makes a super profit by appropriating value in exchange? If you trade one commodity for another of greater value, then you have appropriated value in exchange. There are lots of ways this might happen. One of these ways of appropriating value is to produce a product at less than the socially necessary labor time, but sell it at the socially necessary labor time. Thus, we get back more in exchange than we put into exchange. But where does this appropriated value come from? At first glance, it appears to come from the consumers that buy the commodities. But these consumers are buying a commodity at its value, at the socially necessary labor time. They are not losing value in exchange. They buy a TV for $60 and they get a TV worth $60. The people that do lose value are all of those other capitalists who are still producing at the socially necessary labor time. They are not able to sell all of their product. They lose out. Acme is able to lure more customers away from them. Exchange is a zero-sum game. Whenever one person wins, another must lose. There are only so many people willing to buy TVs at the socially necessary labor time. When Acme appropriates value in exchange, this doesn't mean that they are stealing money from the coffers of their competitors. It means that they are filching away sales from their rivals. More value comes to Acme than it actually created. Less goes to its rivals. This process goes on every day in a capitalist society. We have an obsession with time and efficiency. Everything from the working day to the motions of workers are timed and rationalized. From the moment the alarm clock rings, you are checking train schedules, punching time cards, and working as efficiently as possible. We even treat our downtime as a period in which to maximize recreation and relaxation. There's an entire field of industrial engineering which is devoted to decreasing socially necessary labor time in society. And some of the most influential minds of the last century have been people like Henry Ford and Frederick Taylor, who made substantial contributions to the reduction of socially necessary labor time, all in the quest for a super profit.